going to call to order the May 12th meeting of the ECAC Energy and
Interesting,
Climate
huh?
Action Committee. And this meeting will be video recorded and broadcast over local access channel 8 and through the town website at www.ecam-ma.gov. Welcome, everybody. Let's go around the horn here just real quickly. I'm Tom McNellis.
John Boyney.
Roberta Longley.
Lenny Carr.
Ula Hegel.
Mike.
Mike Sarcioni. Tom, is your mic on?
You know, push on, push off. Okay, let's see. How's that? Is that better?
Speak again.
Is that better? 1, 2, 3.
No, it's about the same.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah,
I don't know if the mics are on. Well, speak into that one and see if that's doing anything.
Can you hear me? Okay now?
Well, I can hear you, but I can't hear Tom very well.
Okay.
Are we
Just gonna check.
try again? 1, 2, 3.
No.
It's funny, Mike, I hear him perfectly fine.
Yeah. I hear John fine. I hear Olaf fine. But I don't hear Tom very well. That's fine. Continue.
It looks like they might be rebooting or something.
And,
I'll be right back.
okay, thanks, man. Can
You have
guys hear
to
me
check
now?
the audio.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I hear you.
It's the same. Go ahead. I can hear you, but
I'll probably pop loudly. So we didn't get around to the rest of the room here. Our honored guests and volunteers, Jack
Hadley.
Gary Sonical.
and do we get Kathy? I
Happy
lost-
Duro.
Girl, Gail.
All right, thank you. So any public comment on items that are not on the agenda? Say anything. Very good. All right, town administrative, Shana is out of, was away for the weekend, I believe. She was hoping to be back tonight, but she sent me some info. And with her apologies if she wasn't able to make it. All right. So she said her main update is that she's heard from the consultants on the green energy, the green climate leaders decarbonization roadmap. That they will be providing a draft for the decarbonization plan. She was hoping to get it last Friday. Don't know if it came in time for close of business. But Shana said once she's back in the office, she will send that out to us. They said that there will be missing information that we need to fill in regarding the buildings and other things. So we'll see what that looks like when it comes in. Also, I have an update on the EV chargers. So I spoke to the principal at Rivermore Energy, who's the person that is, or the company that is managing the project. They have an installer, and they just finished a project down in Chatham. It's here. And so the good news is that the project is still active. It is in the engineering design phase. Right now they're waiting for the interconnect approval from Eversource, and they were planning on doing a site visit in the near future. He didn't have a date on that. And the next phase, though, is the installation phase after all the planning is done, and that is still with Mass DOT. So there's the question mark. I asked him specifically, do you think we are affected by any clawback? He said he thought we were pretty highly ranked at Mass DOT, so that if there's only partial clawbacks, we may still make it through, but there's still question marks there. But he is working on a plan B, funding plan B, which evidently he was able to implement with Chatham, and I didn't get into details. He wants to talk to Rich about that. So that he's hoping that this can still go through. He asked, and I sent the question over to Rich as well. He asked whether we wanted to keep the 4 heads for the NLX. And my thought was probably not. There's only 2 of them working and they're not maintainable. So he was talking about putting in 4 or 6 fast DC chargers. That's what he's working on for the planning right now. So we're still alive, fingers crossed. We're not done. We're not in the all clear zone yet for sure. Okay, other items on the town list. I guess we can talk about the cap a little bit later. I have some stuff in my my report. So with that, why don't we move on to the next part of the agenda? What I've done, as I kind of mentioned to everybody, I've kind of restructured the agenda a little bit, kind of back to the way that we used to do it, where the discussions piece is really things that are up for review and deliberation, and not general updates. The general updates will come later, and there'll be member updates and liaison updates, and those are the items, frankly, if we run out of time, those are the items that we'll have to pick up later. So those are the non-essentials.
Sorry, guys.
So on the discussions list, first up is minutes, and the April 7th and 11th are in the meeting packet. Hopefully everyone had a chance to take a peek at that. Are there any questions, comments on those 2 meeting minutes? Does anyone want to make a motion to approve?
The motion to approve?
Bruce?
Second.
We have motion to approve the April 7th and April 11th meeting minutes. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? So, Harriet, I couldn't tell if you were an aye or a nay.
I am a I.
Okay, there we go. I think you're muted. I didn't see a hand. So.
Sorry, I'm.
So 7-0, okay. All right. The next is the solar recommendations for the wastewater treatment plant. So that's also in the meeting packet. Would anyone like me to put that up on the screen? Do you all have a copy of that? Yeah. Okay, so the idea here was to express our interest in urging the town to request consideration to make the wastewater treatment facility solar ready. How far they can go on that is not completely clear. We met with Rich last week. We had done through the stationary energy group some looks at possible places that one could put ground solar, as well as recommendations for orienting the roofs properly for best exposure to solar. The ground areas are questionable at best from what I can tell. So the site plot is in flux. There's some frustration at the town that they're getting these things very last minute from the planners, from the designers, and so things are moving very quickly. And they they're at the 30% design review and waiting to move forward to the 60% review, at which point things will pretty much be locked down. And that's in the July timeframe. That's their schedule. But there was a shuffle of the layout in order to try to make the site a little less intrusive to the folks in the neighborhood, trying to move some of the buildings back a little bit from the road and away from other residents and things like that. But also there's an issue that the DPW has concerns about how much space they will have to make that a working yard and how much space they really need, and not clearing any additional ground that is providing buffers to adjoining houses. So there's a lot of things in consideration there. There's also a drainage pond. So the approach here that you'll see in the memo is to give a notional siting plot. If you look on that page where the plot is, you'll see a ground mount solar shown on the upper right side of the plot. I'm not holding my breath for that one because that's a drainage basin. Technically, one should be able to do that. How that's going to go over with the wastewater treatment folks and the layout and the solar installers, I don't know. Rich thought that might be a possibility there. I also put one on the far left, which is the northern end of the site, on the north side of the road. That would kind of be a squeeze, but it might work. The other requests you see in there are to orient the two buildings, which are now in the western side of this plot. North is to your left on the plot. Again, there's concerns that because of the way the interiors of those buildings are laid out and the access needed for trucks, that might not work. So one of the recommendations here that you'll see is if we can't orient them so that the roofs are slanted to the south, make them flat. And actually it gives us a little bit more roof space, as Mike had pointed out, that's a plus. The main points in the memo is that there's a very large electric usage at this facility. I did a comparison to the current Eastham electricity usage for the municipality, and it increases our total annual usage by 70%. That's a pretty big 70%. And the electric usage at the site was estimated by the designers to be well, they gave a number of $136,000, and that's about 9% of the annual operating costs at the site. So I think there's a lot of good cases in here to install solar. So the recommendations are here to do that. The next step is after this gets a consideration by the Capital Planning Projects Committee and hopefully the site designers. Rich has asked us to take a look at inventorying solar possibilities across the town. So his thought was that just because we can't fit it in at the site doesn't mean we're not going to put in solar somewhere to try to offset the usage. Okay, so it might be a two-step. So that's kind of what you see here. I just want to open it up for any thoughts, comments, recommendations.
Sure. So I don't know if Mike, I don't want to steal your thunder, but we did talk a little bit about the existing solar installation and that there's more space. I don't know if we had that discussion last time.
When you say the existing,
Over the land,
Oh, right,
the
yes,
capped
yeah.
landfill, and then because I bike by there a lot and I see that there's a lot of south facing, it's sloping, but it's south facing, real estate there.
right.
So the question is, could we expand that as well?
Right. Right, agreed. Yeah. And I think the other recommendation was that we talk to the Open Space Committee And we talked to the town planner. There is a GIS map that we can kind of look at all the different plots that the town has. And try to figure out which ones might be most amenable to that.
There's also, along the roadway to the tower that's off of, Nauset Road, I believe it is. It goes over from, Brackett towards Nauset Road. There's a new water tower pump station area. And along that access way to the left is an open area that faces south. So you could potentially do a ground mount system there. We should look at too.
Yeah, we should go take a walk down there. That's the new wellhead. I think it's a
Right.
COA, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's also
We also talked about a potential land swap with sand and gravel up in Northeast Ham, which is adjacent to the existing pump house site now. So there's some basically, it's a pretty large area that's currently been disturbed for them to harvest sand and raw material. And there may be an opportunity to do a land swap there if folks don't want to remove scrub pine. Scrub oak and pitch pine rather. So, which I think is personally is a fire hazard, but that's another story.
Yeah, and there's certainly a bunch of strategies, as you say, that if we do have to disturb something, maybe we make planting additional trees, perhaps higher quality trees, hardwoods and whatnot in other parts of town to replace scrub oaks that have to be taken down or scrub pines or other. So anyway, I think that'd be the next step. But any other thoughts on the memo?
I'd just like to add that I think it's really great that we're putting this in writing. Besides just the verbal communication and the capital planning committee, then we're on record as to our interest and our ideas, and so that is a really positive step. And the other thing I wanted to add is I think there's real value to, as we talked about with Rich, to kind of do an overall analysis of potential future spots for solar. And that's in a way an invitation for our group to really work with some of the other committees and so on to perhaps put something in writing in a similar fashion, but just something more formal so that it's there and it has to be responded to. So
Yeah. Any other thoughts? I'm gonna close the door.
Yeah, Tom, we had a CVEC board strategy meeting late last week, and I did mention to the directors that because they've been asking each town to come up with what they want to do. And so again, I brought up the town hall complex, the landfill, the trying to extend the south facing slope, as well as why we wanted to do it for the wastewater treatment facility, and some other potential opportunities up, as I mentioned before, in Northeast Ham. So we just have to run those through and determine whether we want to go through CVEC or we want to go with a separate developer.
Very good. Is there a way to get, say, a subject matter expert from CVEC to come over and walk through some sites with us and try to give us a, thoughts before we go out for bid?
Yep. Well, all right. So there's a couple other opportunities. As you know, the landfill is a shared facility where we get, I think, about 70% of the production, and then the other 30% is there's a bunch of off takers. And so it sounds like there's some large areas down potentially near Barnstable that could host some large, again, arrays. And so, much like what Rich is saying, that the production doesn't necessarily have to be not only does it not necessarily have to be in Eastham or part of the DPW site or wastewater treatment facility, but it could also be outside of the town itself. So, we're talking about cash out options as well as behind the meter and net metering. So we just have to continue to explore and figure out who's the best people to partner with. But CVEC's trying to reinvent itself, so that's another part of what's happening as well.
Okay, any other thoughts? Otherwise, what I would, well, let's double check. I think in terms of I think that would be myself as chair that would send it on behalf of the committee. Does that sound right? And as it happens, the Capital Projects Planning Committee is meeting tomorrow. So let's see if we can get it in time for them. So I move them to submit this memo as you see it here to the Capital Project Committee.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Very good. Yeah, happy to just as Roberta, as you said, start getting getting some recommendations in the pipeline, because I think soon we're going to be having more and more coming up with green communities and with Northeastern Town Center and a lot of interesting things coming up. And it's interesting that the municipal piece, which really wasn't as strong in our goals discussion last December, is definitely picking up quite a bit here, which is a good thing.
Yeah, we have to be nimble. I think
Yeah,
sometimes,
yeah.
sometimes we have
Yeah.
to sort of change priorities.
Yeah.
Based on what's happening.
Yeah. Okay, next up, speaking of which, is the a framework that we talked about with Rich on green communities and climate leader. Roberta, you want to say any mention about the about our meeting and some of the things coming up next in those areas?
We met with Tom and myself and Shana, met with Rich, I guess it was a week ago, about a week ago.
Approximately, yeah.
Yeah. And initially, we framed the meeting with a draft of what you're looking at to kind of get the conversation going as to how our committee could have a more formal interaction with his office and with the town relating to town energy efficiency. And it was a really good conversation. A lot of it was focused on the wastewater treatment facility and the solar, and there was a lot of information exchanged that we didn't have, which kind of updated the memo you just looked at, which was, conversation is wonderful because a lot of those things we didn't know. So that's all. That's the positive thing about sitting down with people. We also discussed how we might go forward in the future in interacting with Rich and his staff. And so what you're seeing here, I think, is a good summary of how we pulled that together. He is very open to meeting. I guess we'll say 3 times a year.
Right.
And so I don't know what else to add. It was a very positive meeting, and I think we have a good framework for it.
Yeah, and the 3 dates, rough months down below is what Shane had suggested. And the December meeting, that's around the time of the capital improvement planning, so that's the long-term planning, what projects should be prioritized, and for us, of course, that would be in the area of energy efficiency and both transportation and buildings. And then May is roughly the time frame after the town meeting, and we kind of had that May meeting already, but it's to start looking at what do we want to do for fall competitive grants that, at least up until now, have always been called for by the DOER for the Green Communities Division. And then September would be looking at grant opportunities and annual reporting, green community, and things along those lines. So this will all, I think, firm up as we go through it. So roughly, nothing super formal here. It's kind of like why just calling it framework. But I think another good thing that came out of it was the ZEV policy. So we kind of have a route forward for that. And Roberta has pulled up a ZEV template, ZEV first template. And I think we have a way forward. We're going to be looking at that. And I know I owe you some comments on that. And then we'll schedule that with Jackie and then the select board.
Yeah, Rich had suggested, now you remember the zero energy vehicle policy, the town has to commit to one in order to apply for the climate leader designation. To get the you have to have the climate leadership designation in order to apply for money from the state for a lot of different green projects. So that's the purpose of it, is to get a policy for Eastham. And what Rich shared with us is that his thought, the best way to do that is for the committee to propose the policy. Easy enough because there is a sample online from the Department of Energy Resources that we come up with the proposal of the policy. Our committee signs off on that, and then we then share that with Rich. Then that goes to the select board for approval and discussion. So that's kind of the process that we understood we should go through, which we didn't know before. So that's a good thing. Yeah.
Just a quick question, Roberta. That's super interesting. Do we need to, is that the last thing we need in order to qualify?
To apply to.
Yeah, to apply, right.
We need two things. One is the decarbonization roadmap, which Shana is working with a consultant on. So our understanding is that consultant will provide that for the town. So that's one. And then the second piece then is the zero energy vehicle policy that the town commits to a hierarchy of purchases in the future.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In that meeting, the decision was to set December 31st or the end of December as a target date for getting the application in place, right?
That is the call date by DOER. It's December, I don't know if it's 31st. Do you remember?
Oh, to apply?
Yeah.
December 31st,
It is
I believe.
Yeah. Yeah, so the goal would be to apply for by the 31st.
Yeah.
And I think what we would do, Roberta, I guess we hadn't talked about this, but start queuing that up as we brief the select board for the ZEV policy. This is why we're doing it. This is what next step would be.
Roberta, do you know who Shana is working with? What consultant is doing the decom roadmap?
I don't have it on the tip of my tongue.
Okay.
When we were awarded the consultant, I looked it up at the time. It's an international consulting firm that this is their specialty. So the state employs them, I guess.
Yeah.
Contracts with them. Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Any other questions on that? We'll and I guess we'll be needing help as we go through that. We'll try to figure that out as in terms of how much work we need yet. We don't know that yet. I don't think it'll be too bad.
Hopefully we'll have something for the committee to look at in June.
Yeah,
That's our goal.
Okay. Next, I know the communications group, Harriet and John have been doing some really interesting work. So I'll turn it over to you, John.
Sure. Yeah, Harriet's out there. Yeah, hey, Harriet. We've done some work most recently, returning to look at the, construction of a bulletin that would come out on a regular basis, bi-monthly is kind of a proposal from the committee, referring to it as a bulletin, not as a newsletter. And what we shared with the committee and this month is a draft look and feel for this product. The intent is to keep it to one page and to have certain standardized sections to it that would include an update on the activities of the committee, would include some calendar items, just, listing events that might be of interest to people who are on our mailing list. A feature, kind of graphic oriented feature that would share some interesting information that we were tentatively calling, did you know that? And we provided an example of that in this initial look and feel. Those are the main categories that we propose putting in there. But we put out a call to the committee to see if people had other ideas for things that they might want to include, either as examples of those several categories or as new categories. And Mike suggested having some sort of an ongoing metric that we could update on community progress, essentially, or uptake of solar, for example, or of heat pumps or what have you. Something where we can just sort of progress of the Eastham community on things that are of a priority for the committee. And I think Jack had the suggestion, which I think was a good one, to solicit volunteers to support or to provide testimonials for the heat pump guide that we are developing, which is subject to the next item on the agenda here shortly. So what we've done is just put this out here for the committee's consideration to see if this is the kind of look and level of detail and style that we want to have for this product, for this bulletin. It would be distributed every other month. We would rely heavily on the mailing list that the committee maintains for distribution, but we could also make this available through social media. The template that was used is something just from Word, and it's fairly simple. It's formatted such that you can distribute it via email and it should transmit well. I noticed it didn't seem to print very well, so I need to double check that. But so what we're looking for today is reaction from the committee. Is this the sort of thing that you have in mind when we have the concept for this bulletin? Or do you have some notes that you'd like to share on ways to strengthen? Yeah.
Will there be a link to this document? Like, for example, if you put it on Facebook,
Mm-hmm.
people can click to get to it, as opposed to having it be some kind of document on Facebook.
For social media, I think we'd want to do a link.
Yeah.
For the email distribution, I think ideally you just bring it up.
Okay, so you could easily create a link for it.
Sure.
Yeah,
Right.
okay.
So just a comment, John, when you get to the point that you finalize it, we could put the link to it up on the part of our website too.
Great.
Now, the place to put the link is something we'll have to work out. I think we're still a work in progress, unfortunately, on our
Yes.
webpage, on the town website.
Yes, that is a contingency that we have to.
Well, if you're going to send it out to your distribution list, you can just send it out as a PDF. You don't have to have it anywhere.
Right.
Relatively small list.
Yes. How many do we have on the list now? Do we know? I mean,
We have around 250,
250. Okay.
maybe a little bit more than that.
And for my purposes, I can create a URL for it to put it on my site.
Mm-hmm.
There-
Mike, I'm sorry, Mike, did you want to say anything more about your suggestion?
No, I think you pretty much covered it. Again, just like infographics,
Mhm.
by the numbers, or, how many solar installations did Eastham currently have in the town? How many people are converted to heat pumps, and just running metrics, and maybe you do that once a year to update it.
Mhm,
know.
mhm.
Mike,
And then-
what would be the source for that?
The town.
So the town knows when someone has solar installed?
Well, I think Jack did some deep digging based on permitting. So
there's-
that'd have to be something, and Jack, you could speak up, is whether you think that's something we can do just by looking at the permitting.
Well, the permits, yes, the town assessment database is much less reliable for updating that kind of information, so we'd have to coordinate with the building office, and the electrical permits with regard both to heat pumps and solar. I mean, in principle, it's doable, but we'd have to work out the connections.
Right, so once a year, we look at the permits and try to find out folks that applied for heat pumps and folks that applied for solar, and we could do counts each year that were new.
One of the things that Harry and I have tried to keep top of mind is sort of the level of effort that's required to do this bulletin and crank it out even on a bi-monthly basis. And so that's just one thing we want to be sort of considerate of how much effort would be involved in keeping something like that up to date. I imagine it's the sort of thing that once we've kind of got it rolling and got a way to do it, it wouldn't take a lot of time to maintain, but we just would want to remain sort of aware of that consideration.
Okay, I think Kathy or Cheryl's up next.
Hi, I just, when it comes time to distribute it, and you want to expand it, the COA sends in their newsletter to all seniors. So that's a few thousands. And then they also have a digital copy available. So I don't think we'd have enough space to put in the whole newsletter if it's a whole page. But they might be able to put a blurb with a link, and we might be able to put something in the digital newsletter. Just Dorothy would be the one to reach out to. We do it every 2 months, so it's probably not going to be. I don't know how soon you're going to be ready, because they start working on it at least a month before it goes out.
All right, Lenny.
Yeah, I think this looks really nice. And for digital media, I think it's a great tool. I also think that it is nice to have some hard copies in some places, like at Town Hall, for example, or at the library. And if that were the case, I think wherever you have, get more information here, I mean, that's designed to just click on it. It would be helpful to have the URL for people to actually just put it in there. They pick it up at the library, they bring it home, they're checking it out. I think that would be a way to do it.
Or a QR code or something on it, so.
Yeah, remember, there are a lot of seniors in this town.
What do you think the main, the primary thrust should be? We talked a little bit about telling people what the progress is in town. Certainly events, I think you were thinking events, I believe would go in here.
Yes, yeah.
Announcing events.
Mhm.
Do you think we should put tips in just to try to encourage people? Again, I think back on, where we talked about one of Jack's ideas on don't idle at the beaches. Those are things that which eventually will get into hopefully into the climate action plan. But those are things I think could be in here just to remind people.
Yeah, that's part of the idea behind the did you know that example that we put in this here in this draft book. Now, there's not a tip per se there, but it is designed to be sort of a helpful reminder to people or an alert to people that in this case, heat pumps are super efficient, and here's some actual data behind it. But yeah, Tom, that's the idea behind that feature is we wanted to have several different types of information and things that people could react to. One is tips, information, things that people can act on. for their own benefit. Another is the update on ECAC activities. We were mindful of Roberta's recommendation that we have something in every bulletin that's actionable. And so for that particular piece, we stress that here's what's going on with the climate action plan, and here's what you can do. And there are several things that are listed. So we got information. Did you know? Here's what you can do to improve your own situation. Here's something we can act on that the committee is active in. And then, yeah, there's calendar items, essentially events that are we think should be of interest.
So I think what you're asking right now
Mhm.
is a sense of the committee on whether this kind of format and this type of content is in line with what everyone thinks would be effective. And then I think you're going to come back for the first inaugural newsletter with the actual content.
Right. So I didn't get to that, and I should have gotten to that, which is that I mentioned doing this every other month, and I'm not hearing any pushback on that. So I'll assume that we can go forward with that sort of a cadence. And we'd like to get something out in this next month that would cover the period as indicated here, July, August. Now I think the content that we've got here for 2 of these 3 sections is decent content that I propose that we use. The update on the ECAC activities on the climate action plan and the heat pump, did you know? We haven't filled in specifics on the calendar. I was waiting just to see what we have, and there's actually items here in the agenda materials that I propose we include. But yes, we can come back to the committee with the content to approve to distribute this. And I think we do that for the June meeting. Would that work?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. So we would plan to do that, and let's see, when's the next? It's June 9th. Yeah, that timing would work out. Okay.
Okay.
We'll have a lot of good dates for the pop-ups and.
Exactly. Right.
meetings.
Exactly.
Very good. Yeah, nice work. I think this looks very interesting.
And it looks nice.
Just a couple of comments. There might be, since we have the mailing list, something that we could perhaps mail out that could go out prior to the dissemination of the first bulletin for things that are maybe coming up between now and when the bulletin would be released, and we don't events, what have you, so people don't miss those. And also, did I hear, Tom, like 100 and something email addresses on the email list?
250, and I'm thinking more like 270, somewhere in there.
250, 270. Okay, well, just there's some different ways that perhaps we can continue to build that up. Now I mentioned that, I don't know if Paul lagged, if they must have a pretty robust email list from the different meetings they've had for the strategic plan and what have you. I know they have additional meetings coming up. So I don't know if it'd be possible, we could have sign up sheets wherever, and sign up for the email list and, some kind of incentive or something, but we can through the year, and I guess all the time, or something at the library or what have you, to really try to grow that email list.
That's interesting, Harry. You mentioned the sign up, and I wonder if there should be something on the newsletter for those that aren't getting it by email to suggest if you'd like to sign up.
Yes.
Very
Go to our
good point.
website.
Yes.
Yes, definitely.
And I'd just like to reiterate again, the importance of links in terms of real critical mass. Yes, 250 is great, but in the scheme of things, what percentage of people are actually opening it? What percentage are actually reading it? So there's got to be a much wider distribution, and the advantage of social media is that you can reach hundreds and even thousands of people sometimes. Maybe that, throughout the year, maybe we've honed it a little more so we can link it. You know what I'm saying? Just more links.
I wonder if the town would entertain sending out a news blast just to say, hey, an inaugural bi-monthly newsletter is just been released. Go to the the Energy and Climate Committee website and take a look at it.
And sign up.
And that'll be in there, yeah.
And I followed up with, forgetting her name, with the recycling committee. She was at the last meeting and mentioned, that they are doing a newsletter and wanted to coordinate with us, and we could definitely sort of cross promote each other's newsletters. I think that would be another way to get some additional people on our list. So that's a town action that you made
Yeah.
the suggestion.
Yes, yeah. We're adding to our list of many town actions. Alani,
Yeah, you know, it might not be a bad idea. I think I mentioned this around something else in our work group. You know, the town periodically sends information out to all citizens. Maybe our inaugural one should go, you know, if there's something related to, you know, like we just got that something for stickers, right? You know, for the dump and for the beaches and all that. So, you know, obviously we missed that, but there might be an opportunity when they do something like that to include a newsletter. To just kind of get it out there to everybody that, hey, this exists and this is where you find it, and, you know, keep your eye out for it. It has helpful tips kind of thing. For people who, you know, because I don't know about you guys, but I have my email goes like this. There's like a personal email file, and then there's like everything else. And I only go to everything else when I'm bored. Or, you know, I'm looking for something. Or if I'm looking for a coupon, or if I'm looking for, you know, so unless it actually comes to a main inbox, you know, these things can easily just get bypassed. And I think if you somebody gets a chance to see one, and they're like, hey, this is a good thing to have. And, you know, maybe they put it in their personal box, which you can do. I just worry about, you know, email fatigue, digital fatigue.
Yeah, that's a great point, Eleni. And I think with each bulletin, we need some sort of a hook, some sort of
Right.
line that's going to grab the interest of the person. So, you know, we don't want it to read the subject line to read Eastham Energy and Climate Bulletin every time. We want something that's going to be more dynamic and catchy than that, if you will. So,
Well, the July and August
Mhm.
period is really ideal for making people aware that the town is creating a climate action plan,
mhm.
and that we're getting out into the community through all these pop-ups, through all these focus groups, through all these opportunities for people to share their views about what the town can do.
Yeah.
So maybe that could be the, you know, the maiden voyage here is
Definitely.
the climate action plan.
That's the headline.
Yeah.
I suspect a few people in town grok what's going on with the climate action plan,
Right.
That there is one in the works. So yeah, we need to make that the priority for this first one.
very good. Exciting. And that really leads us right into the next topic, which is the homeowner's guide for heat pumps.
And
And Jack, yeah, come on up and I know you were a key contributor here.
Jack is the key.
The brains behind
He's
that, yeah.
the drive. So, in fact, Jack, do you want to just summarize what we've been doing here?
Well, sure, very quickly. So the 2-page outline that I think everybody received as part of the packet for this, the first page, the outline, lists the current structure that we have in mind for doing this guide. And the first, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, the first 5 topics are pretty much standard boilerplate. They're you know, just very descriptive information. I think the key issue in my mind really is whether the committee, and what would be novel about this guide is if you flip it over or look at page 2, the key questions are: how much does it cost to install a heat pump? What are the differences in operating costs relative to a new oil burner? And what's the impact on CO2? A couple of other towns have guides on their websites. Olaf was very good in digging them up. The town of Brookline, the town of Westboro. And they're very, very thorough, very complete, but don't have any numbers on costs or impact. What they have are links to, Mass Save or the Greenhouse Commission and so forth, which are actually pretty spotty. What this guy would do would use this a pretty sophisticated calculator that was developed by the Rocky Mountain Institute that allows you to plug in specifics of a particular type of home structure, and then it churns out the difference in cost, or the cost of replacing your oil burner with a new oil burner versus a heat pump. Also the difference in operating costs. The Mass Save, for example, has a heat cost calculator, which looks only at heating costs. What the RMI calculator does, it takes into account total energy use in the house. So it includes air conditioning in the summertime, for example, where heat pumps are really very advantageous and certainly relevant to the decision a person would want to make. So, so I think that's really the key issue, whether the committee feels comfortable in generating a document that has numbers. There would, of course, be a disclaimer about these are just examples, and you need to contact your own, you need to get estimates from contractors. So that's really, I think, about it. We do have a somewhat longer version that has a little more content to it. And then maybe for the next meeting or the meeting afterwards, we could distribute that longer version to give everybody a better sense of what this thing would actually look like.
The basic question.
Yeah, do you have any thoughts on what a typical home might be? Because I think there could be several categories there. Certainly small home versus large home, seasonal home versus full-time home.
Right, so the baseline of the prototype is basically a 3-bedroom home with between 1,500 and 2,000 square feet, built between 1980 and 2000. And the calculator allows you to vary all of those dimensions. So you could do a larger home, smaller home. You could do a home that has a duct system, a home that uses window air conditioning. What else? 2 floors versus 1 floor. At some point it gets, then there's just too much that would come out of this. So I think it's sort of sticking on some basic variations and going from there.
Yeah, one thought that we had, and I'm not sure if we put that in here, but that is to take some examples of actual homeowners that have actually done it. Like, for instance, I did it in 2023. So I have data from, so the idea was to, and I don't know if this is the same concept, but the idea would be that it would be kind of like, how do I get the data from Eversource? Like, okay, here's a link to, you can download data, you can figure out how much you're using, you can figure out what you're paying, so forth. And then talk about, kind of the process, in a very one-page kind of visual type thing.
These are, if you look at the outline that was distributed as part of the agenda today, what Olaf is referring to as the testimonials. It's the final, very final section proposed in the document.
And that could provide, like, I would use real numbers from, like, say, Eastham Oil, discount oil. I would use Eversource, the CLC rate so that it would kind of hone in on, we are in Eastham, this is, if you have oil, this is probably, like I use the Silver Lines membership to get a discounted oil and stuff like that. Used to, and then I still have a hot water heater, but so that could be a way to sort of do numbers. The problem with numbers is they change. Federal incentives may change. Mass Save may up their incentives. I don't know. So it's very difficult to sort of use static numbers that that are usually changing. So the idea would be to help people find information in a meaningful way.
Would your case be possibly a validation of the model?
Yes, in some instances, yes. I still, and I know Jack has struggled with kind of how to affect the actual rate because the RMI calculator pulls in some, I guess it's a rate that is kind of representative, but it wasn't quite what my rate was, so, you know, so there are, you know, ways of, I mean, you know, my house was built in 1980, which is the beginning of the range, right? So it'd be great to find some other testimonial for a more up to date, newer home, perhaps.
Possible.
Yeah.
So you're looking to do a short, how many pages are we looking at ultimately?
Well, we have a 4-pager so far.
Okay.
So, but you know, if you get into all these variations, you know, again, the thought was you'd start with a prototype and then there would be like an appendix. So if somebody says, well, my house is newer, my house is older, they could go and look that up.
Yeah.
It's in, you know, as a digital document, that could be any length basically.
Or refer them to the website, approach different use cases there, I suppose.
Right.
Because I do think it's important. I mean, the seasonal homes, the part-time residents are like half of the stock, the housing stock in the town. Can we make a case there that there's, you know, that's a really key piece? And then again, there's folks that are very small homes and then massive homes, and somewhere in there they've got to be able to see themselves or be able to tweak it, I guess, so that they can see themselves.
Right. Well, again, as part of, you know, sort of the overall consideration of this, I would really urge people to take a look at what these other two towns have done, which is a lot of text and a lot of links, but nothing really specific to anybody's house. And you know, we could easily do the same thing. You know, just reproduce that pretty much, and that would be, you know, all you would have to do then is update the links occasionally when there's new information.
Well, if you can pull them in the way you're doing it, which is great, you know, you get their attention and get them excited, and then if they want to tweak it for their own case, maybe they get sent somewhere else to look up the details.
Well, and a lot of the value in the numbers is in the relative of that numbers, right? It's comparing. That's inherently what this guide is all about. Is comparing, you know, taking the sort of conventional update your system and not change the energy that you're using or the fuel sources you're using versus going with heat pumps. And so just having the comparative numbers is a lot of the power, we think, of this.
Right, it's the argument.
Yeah. Right. And also there is a real education value to this to help people understand that the numbers do change, that they're not going to be static, and that people have to consider all of their energy usage as they're trying to make these kinds of decisions. So we see this as a lot of the value of the guide, as well as helping deepening people's understanding of the subject generally. So Tom, you have a question about length, concern about length?
No, just asking.
Yeah.
Okay. It's about 4 pages you're looking at roughly.
Well, the sort of first cut is about 4 pages, right? And then
It's going to be longer.
And then it would be expansive. We didn't fill in some of the text that's in this little first cut. Has some pictures.
Right. What is a heat pump type thing, you know?
We also want to, we want to have more visual, more graphics, more breaking up of the text.
Well, I think you also want to do it as a pyramid fashion. It's kind of the, you know, the old newspaper story kind of, you know, if somebody only reads a couple paragraphs, put that really important stuff up front. And if you don't grab their attention within the first paragraph or two, they might put it aside.
Yeah, I agree with that principle. I do think in this case, what this product is going to be is more of a modular product. And in other words, you can scan down the outline. You can say, are you interested in understanding how heat pumps work? Well, you can pull out that section and look at that. Are you interested in the financial incentives? You can pull out that section and look at it. In other words, you don't have to progress through sections 1, 2, 3, 4 in a sequential fashion. There's not that kind of dependency of the content. So, if we're clear up front about who this is for, what the basic pieces of content are, segments are, and the value of those segments for people, then they can kind of move through the document in a way that works for them. That's the idea.
Right, in the particular example on page 2 of what was sent around, I thought it was kind of striking that you actually spend less putting in the heat pump than replacing your furnace, and you also have lower operating costs over time, and of course, a much bigger impact on the climate. We didn't put in the operating costs of the climate in this little example, but that could have a pretty significant effect on somebody who's thinking about whether to go heat pump or not, I think, so.
One thought I have, Jack, just since you mentioned part-timers, I wonder, like, I remember my plumber would always tell me, don't call for an emergency between, say, October and December, because that's when I drain, part-timers' hydronic heating system. So in other words, they're draining the system so they don't have to heat it over the winter. But if you have a heat pump, you don't have to go through that effort. You don't have to drain it, nor do you have to fill it back up again. I wonder if there's any stats on how many people actually just leave their homes completely unheated in the winter.
I don't know.
But
I mean, my plumber was like, that's all I do.
Actually, from when I was a part-timer, the insurance company would tell us, you either have to drain or you need to leave the heat on at like 55.
Yeah.
That's, I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
You don't need to do
Yeah,
that.
so you either have to have the expense of draining and then
Yeah.
refilling, or you have to maintain the 55, which I also did, when I.
Olaf, it's not just the hydronic system you're draining all the plumbing in the house.
Right, exactly.
So, that's not just that unless you're gonna run the heat pump, you're gonna have to drain the other pipes.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking, right, exactly, but I mean, you have more control over, I don't know, it's just that it's an argument, it's not an argument yet, but I'm just trying to think of ways in which part-timers may consider it as an advantage, perhaps.
But what we wanted to do though is have a section, an example specific to part-time folks. And that's a huge part of our community.
Yeah.
But we wanted to show why is it economically advantageous for part-time folks who maybe aren't here in the winter or are just here on weekends, maybe. Why would they want to make this investment? So.
Kathy, have your hand up.
So a couple of things. I think you'd be surprised at what percentage of part-time residents actually have oil heaters and run them in the winter. Interestingly enough, so I think that's a category we shouldn't ignore that, right? The other thing, and I know that's not your major focus, but I've talked to Tom about it a little bit. Maybe a future situation is, heat pumps are a much more effective way to provide air conditioning and to handle the shoulder seasons. Right, so I think that there is a business case to be made for, so that's like a different case. I mean, you have part-time residents who already have heating systems and run them during the year, right? For the, over the winter. But you also perhaps have part-time residents who don't have an oil burner, right? Like, so I'll put myself as an example. We have horrible electric heat in our house, right? So we're not there about 5 months of the year. And I think I've told this before, running that electric heat is like taking $20 bills and throwing them in the fireplace and burning them, just right out burning them, right? Because the cost is so expensive. So I think that, so for us, the shoulder system is a problem and it's really expensive. We do drain our pipes. So we're kind of like one example, right? A heat pump or even splits, right? Even splits provides, first of all, we'll use less electricity than the electrical system that we have now. It'll be warmer in your house, and it also provides air conditioning and helps you defer the cost of running what in many cases are window air conditioners, right? So there is another case to be made there. I'm not sure it's the first case you want to build, but I think it's a case you definitely want to consider. And maybe there's like an A version and a B version for that.
Very good, thank you.
Very good. So, get the feedback
Yeah, I think our basic question in bringing this to the committee today was, does this seem to be on the right track? Is there any piece of this as outlined and described here that you feel is, at all problematic? We shouldn't invest the time further in it. So any sort of redirection is what we're looking for at this point, or full speed ahead.
Just one question, it just came to me. I really like the illustration of traditional replacements versus green updates. But one thing right now it is not addressing, and I think it's on first and foremost in people's minds, is the cost of electricity. You don't have renewables. What's that going to do to your electric bills? So I assume that you will
Right.
talk about that.
We've discussed that, Roberta.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have that too, right?
Yeah.
Right, there's an option in the calculator for community solar, and there's also an option for adding solar, which gets complicated because of it certainly increases the upfront costs. And I'm not 100% sure how it affects the operating costs at this point. Maybe that's something we definitely need to look at. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of other people in the committee who haven't made any comments yet, so if there are any other reactions, that would be helpful.
Yeah, so I'm sure you would be accepting emails,
Oh, sure.
After the meeting. So please, if you haven't taken a good look through, and especially in light of our discussion here today, which I think has been a great discussion, please send emails to John. Is that the,
Yeah.
how do you want to do that?
Yeah, send it to me and I'll get it.
Yeah, and I guess with your permission, I'd like to circulate the somewhat longer version of this, which is only 2 more pages. It has a little more content in it, and I think would give people a better feel for what it would look like.
And I think the goal would be what, at the next, perhaps at the June meeting to, you think it'd be ready for then?
Well, nothing is gonna happen between now and then because I'm going on vacation.
Oh, okay,
for 3
okay,
weeks.
yeah.
So-
Fair enough.
But it certainly would be enough time to look at what we have so far.
Okay.
And I think that would be
The
helpful.
longer version.
Okay,
Right.
very good.
And maybe my testimonial will be included in that, maybe the second package.
That would be nice if we had
For the
that.
next meeting.
Very good.
I know, I did talk to one other person who made the switch and got rid of the heating oil and put in a heat pump, and we just had a very brief conversation. He said he loves this new system. So
That'll be
task-
the headline.
filling that out, I think would be very helpful.
Very good. All right, thank you. Good discussion. So let's move on. First, I'm gonna, in the chair's report, I first want to do the upcoming events, which is actually the next 2 pages in. So the May 14th, in a couple days, the Climate Leaders webinar. And I think Roberta, you're able to
Planning to
join
attend.
that one, and I've registered as well, and I think everyone is welcome to register for that. If you don't still have the link and want to register, let me know. We have next week a tour of the Orleans wastewater treatment facility, so we're full up right now in terms of the number of folks that they said they could accommodate, but if anyone has any questions that you'd like asked at that tour, just let me know. Rich Gangano is going to join, as well as member of the Capital Projects Committee, so that should be a good discussion. The Energy and Climate Committees of Cape Cod, which is kind of, I'm not sure who funds that. I don't know if that's the compact, but that's through I can't remember
Liz Argo?
Yes, it's Liz, but her organization is, Mike, do you remember her organization? Liz Argo's, I always have trouble with.
But
it. Anyway,
the Climate Action Network?
No.
No,
her-
it's its
her-
own EEOCC something.
Yeah, no, but her, well, anyway. So that's coming up on June 5th. Again, if anyone is interested, in participating, let me know. And then I wanted to mention the Nauset Middle School project. We had a fascinating presentation last week at the class, 2 classes. The students are very engaged. I mean, we even had some students asking, when we got to the questions period of, well, how climate friendly are EVs and batteries, and in particular mercury and precious metals and batteries, and these are eighth graders. Like, wow, that's pretty cool. And Steve Tupper had a great answer for that. And they had a couple of really interesting, very insightful questions like that. So we presented to them. They are in 3 groups in each class. I think it's going to be teams of 3 different teams in each class. They are going to pick a topic for recommendation to Eastham to include as an item in the climate action plan. And we're going back in another week or 2 for coaching, but then the big event is going to be on June 9th. And they're doing final presentations. That'll be to the principal and to the commission. And we have, I believe, 3 slots. 3 extra slots that we can fill. So if would anyone be interested in that? So we've already got Roberta and I will be there. Any other interest in joining for that meeting? It's
I unfortunately cannot. I normally would be interested actually, but that date is not going to work for me.
It's a Monday.
Monday, okay, Monday. And I believe it is midday.
Yeah, it's hard to,
8:30 and 11.
well, not really sure. We're a little unclear whether that's going, is it? 8:30 is one class, 11 is the second class. I don't know whether they're combining it into one. I think we're unclear about that.
Yeah, I believe for the, oh, no, here it is. Okay, so for that day, yeah, 8:30 and 11.
So same. So it's basically the morning.
Same, yeah.
It's the morning,
Yeah.
but it's a fun morning. It's, you know,
Yeah.
we really enjoyed listening to these middle school kids and
Very bright.
yeah,
very bright
yeah.
students.
So
Would anyone be interested in Harriet?
We're coming and going late May through June. So let me check my calendar. I can't find my phone right now, but let me check my calendar. If I'm around, I would be interested in participating. So
And I would also be interested if I don't know exactly my.
Okay,
schedule right
so
now.
check your schedules, yeah. Okay, special town meeting is on the 23rd, the wastewater treatment facility. I put it in because I couldn't find it on the website. It's very challenging, this our town website. June 20th will be our first farmers market table. That's a Friday, June 20th, 8 to noon. And then the second date is actually slightly different than what is in your packet. It just got changed today to July 25th, also 8 a.m. to noon. And we're looking to get 2 or 3 members of the Energy and Climate Committee and a rep from recycling if they are interested. So can you check your calendars for those dates and let me know if I know it's a Friday, so it's a weekday.
I'm sorry, Tom, what was the corrected date in July?
So July 25th.
25th,
Yeah,
okay.
June 20th and July 25th.
Tom, I might as well tell you now, I am not going to be able to make the June 20th.
Okay,
Something has come up and I cannot do it. So we absolutely need another member or 2 at that.
so I will send out an email with the, the request so you can check your calendar and let me know.
So
I'm
July 11th.
confused. Oh, it's a Friday? We're having a farmer's market on a Friday.
Yes, yeah, the farmer's market starts mid-June or early June, I think, and then it's gonna be every Friday until I think the end of August. And it'll be a tea time property. So this will be a community table. There's one community table that's provided. And community groups can request use of the table. And we will have the table all to ourselves those days. And we'll be able to hand out brochures. Hopefully we'll have the newsletter we can hand out and some other handouts. If the heat pump document was ready by then, that might be I know that might be challenging for y'all,
Maybe,
but yeah.
maybe July.
Maybe July, yeah, the July 25th one, that would be awesome for that. Okay, and then there will be training. Helene from the commission has offered to give us, it's like a half an hour, of her tips on manning pop-up tables. So I think that will be actually very interesting, because we can also use that, her tips and tricks, at the winter weekend.
So she could probably do that by Zoom, which would be much more
Yes, that'll
convenient
be
for
by Zoom.
everybody, yeah.
Yeah. So I will send that all out for everybody.
Great.
Okay. And then big event will be July 19th at the East Ham Library. So mark your calendars for that one, 6:30 to 7:30. I'm surprised it's only it's only 1 hour, but that will be the Climate Action Plan workshop. So my understanding is they're going to invite all of the folks that they have interviewed through the town staff. I assume it will be open to the public as well, but I haven't seen details on all that yet. But certainly it's open to the Energy and Climate Committee. That will be a fairly big event for giving feedback to and reviewing what they have gathered so far. So it should be very interesting.
That's a Saturday, looks like, right? That's a weekend.
I think it's a weekend,
It,
yes.
it is, it's a Saturday. I think it's odd.
What's the date?
6:30 to 7:30 on a Saturday night?
In July?
Yep.
Yeah. Doesn't that sound odd?
Mhm.
I'll double check that.
Doesn't sound right.
Yeah. Good
I
point.
think it sounds very odd. Yeah, I don't, yes.
So. Yeah, while we're talking, I will double check. Roberta, did you get that email as well? Maybe I wrote it down wrong, but
I've had many emails from
Yeah.
Wayne. We just have to double check it.
I know, yeah, we can double check. Okay. So, I'll send out an email on support needed for the farmers market and for the North Middle School. Other items.
What about the strategic planning public update?
We're getting there.
Oh, okay.
We're getting there. So other items, that are not on your, in fact, this is the. Where did I write that down? So Cheryl had found an update coming from the town, and a presentation at the COA, for the strategic plan. I think it's gonna be a general discussion. Cheryl, did you get any details on what they're gonna discuss?
Yeah, in fact, if you follow, I just was looking at, it's posted a few times on the different East Ham Facebook pages. It just went up. It's gonna happen at the East Ham Public Library, May 22nd. And they're doing it like they did with the zoning. They're doing it twice on the same day. They're having a formal presentation on the strategic plan. They're updating their strategic plan. Join us to learn about the town's priority projects. And so they're doing it from 4 to 5 with a Q&A from 5 to 5:30. And then they're doing it again from 5:30 to 6:30 with Q&A. And they are going to be providing childcare. I think the rec department's helping out with that. So it just basically says, please learn about the town projects and initiatives that will be prioritized over the next 5 years.
So it's a done deal.
Yeah.
So
It's a
I know I'll go. I just think
Hmm.
probably important that people be there.
What does that mean?
Well, I don't know. I mean, we can talk.
Yeah, what Paula told me is that it's gonna be a living document. And this is the beginning of it, and they're going to be reaching out to us at some point during the year. as well as other groups that are involved in the, in different parts of the plan. And that would have the, that would start adding details. Because I think that's a fairly high level. You'll see it in the town warrant, for this year, the document was, made available.
I just like to make a comment about it. I think that's it, whatever, where climate is noted in the strategic plan is under goal number 1, a clean environment and resilient community. And I think the town lays out what it plans to do for climate adaptation very, very well. What I feel is missing is any discussion of mitigation. And I don't know if that's something that we want to address, or,
Yeah.
like I say, is this a completed document?
Yeah, good questions. Okay, so, for the next meeting on June 9th, we will be doing the, committee officer elections. So if anyone who's interested, in being one of our officers, give me a buzz. So, we've got chair, we've got vice chair, and we've got,
Clerk.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
Yes. If you're not interested in being on committee or being an officer, make sure you're here next meeting. So you don't get nominated. But seriously, anyone who's interested, we'll be taking nominations, and then we'll have vote at the next meeting. Also coming up, as you can see, kind of with the new format, we're not hitting every single goal, every single meeting. We only want to hit the items that have, some items to discuss. I was happy. I don't know what y'all thought tonight, a little bit more focused meeting. But what we will do is have a mid-year goals discussion. And I think that should either be at the June meeting or the July meeting. I don't know if anyone has any preferences. Be kind of a mid-year, let's go through the goals, let's see if we have to do any updates, let's see any adjustments.
I would lobby for July. Like we didn't start right on January 1 necessarily with goals.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Do we know when the July meeting is?
Yes.
Because I am out of the country and arriving back on the 15th of July.
So the time meeting
Yeah, I vote for July too.
is the 14th.
Okay.
July
So
sounds good.
I may miss that.
Okay.
Unless I can dial in internationally.
Okay, okay. All right, I think that it's most, I'll mention the Orleans the OCAN home energy coaching is moving forward. You'll see some details in my notes on that in your packet. And then I met with Chris Palmer, who's the sustainability manager in Truro, very energetic person, and very interested in reaching out. We had some interesting updates on what they're doing in Truro, and including putting up a town-owned solar installation on their landfill, which is interesting. He had some thoughts. It takes up $4 million to put it up front, but he said that the return on investment is better for them. Interesting. And then we're discussing a possible joint meeting with the recycling committee, maybe with Carrie Purcell, inviting her in. So that would be later in the summer, I think. All right. Any other items, updates from anyone? Members or liaisons, updates?
Well, I've got an update. I think most of you know that we've formed a collaborative work group with members from the recycling committee and Olive and Harriet representing the Energy Climate Action Committee. And basically the group was formed to investigate our big solid waste problem at the transfer station. There's a couple of problems with it. It's, first of all, grown enormously over the past year and a half. From 2023 to 2024, it nearly doubled in the amount of solid waste that has been taken away from our transfer station. So that's curious. Where's that coming from? And where the Climate Action Committee interest comes in is that it's emitting 5% methane into our atmosphere. As part of the inventory that Tom had shown 5%. So that's the reason for the collaborative part of it, because both committees have an interest in looking into this further. I've established a upcoming meeting with the director of the Board of Health, Hillary, and also John Ruffley, DPW. That meeting will be taking place this Thursday, and we will review all the regulations that govern the transfer station. And more importantly, or just as importantly, I should say, the regulations that oversee the haulers who visit our dump, who dump their trash into it. And it's a little suspect. There's a lot of questions that come up around the haulers. For example, we've learned that there are some haulers that not only pick up East End's trash, but they pick up, let's say, Orleans trash as well. They have clients all over the Outer Cape, Lower Cape, or rather Upper Cape. And it seems like it's a possibility that these haulers are not dumping just Eastham trash, but maybe Orleans and Brewster and God knows what else. What other towns that might be included in the composition of their trash that they're dumping into solid waste.
So good, maybe a good discussion, because we're gonna wrap up here for 6
Yeah,
o'clock.
let's do that.
Good discussion for, I mean, that's exciting to hear what's going on
We've
there.
got a meeting coming up Thursday, and it's gonna be interesting because it's all the regulatory stuff, and we'll know more about those regulations. I think we'll have a better report for you guys next month.
Excellent, excellent. All right, we'll put that on the agenda. Any other member updates?
Yeah, I would just throw in that the adaptation committee, you know, we read the whole hazard mitigation plan of the 2021 in preparation for the 2026 update, actually, which is going to be held. They're going to start working on this in September. We're hoping this summer to have a kind of a summary presentation to you that kind of brings us you know, to baseline about what's going, you know, what was in the old plan. We can have a discussion about what we really think needs to be prioritized in the new plan, and one or two of us will be participating with the town and the Cape Cod Commission in the development of the next hazard mitigation plan. So more on that in a coming meeting.
Move to adjourn.
I hear a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
I'll second it too.
Favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, any opposed?
Thank
Next
you.
is June 9th. Thank you all. I think it's been a great discussion, and I'll send out some updates as we